Hey guys, Michal Hucko here. Thank you very much for joining the Python for Beginners tutorial, and in this video we're gonna talk about lists. In the previous videos we talked about mathematical operations, the string operations, but now lists. Well, lists can be a little bit trickier because lists, you can imagine lists as storage for multiple variables in the same time. So before we were talking about the variables, which are single place storages, basically, and the lists can store more than one variable in the same time. You can think about it this way. So let's jump right in into the hands-on in the Visual Studio Code. So before we start it, as you can see, I'm in my Visual Studio Code. Here are a couple of other Python files which I created for you. They will include a lot of examples, training examples for you. So if you have a spare time, feel free to go through them. You can find them at my GitHub page. So let's go to the lists. As you can see, there are a couple of examples. We will go one by one, but before we start, let's create an empty file. I call it a hands-on, where we will run a different commands, Python commands. So in order to run the commands, as we are always doing, we will use the Visual Studio Code. You need to show the terminal in the bottom part. The terminal in the Visual Studio Code is exactly the same to the terminal as in the Mac. So if you go here to the terminal, you got the same terminal in the Visual Studio Code. In order to show the terminal, go to Terminal pane and choose the new terminal option if you don't see this terminal. Right. So this terminal is amazing because it allows us to select a code from the Python file and then run it pressing the Shift plus Enter keys. So I will show you. So let's start by defining simple list. Let's call it numbers and add there some numbers. And these are the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So you got this list, and then we're gonna print the numbers. So in order to run the Python code correctly in the Visual Studio Code terminal, you need to go to the terminal down here and write Python 3. This will initiate the Python interpreter, and now the commands from the file will be copied, pasted directly into the interpreter and run. So let's try it out. Select these two lines. Press Shift Enter, and as you can see, numbers is not defined at the first line. Yeah. So as you can see, there is a syntax error. Yeah, right here I'm missing the comma. So running it again, and then you always have to scroll down to the bottom because the commands will stack one on another. So the second time I run it is this print. So the print there was the error, but here is the numbers. This is the specification, the first line, and then the print numbers, the second line. Okay, so from now on, I will only run the commands as followed by selecting the code in the Visual Studio Code and pressing Shift Enter. So back to the lists. So here you can see how a list looks like. So it consists of square brackets and the content inside, and these are the list's elements. And the list's elements can be any object, any data type. In this case I'm using numbers, but feel free to add here strings like, for example, Michal, and running it as follows. You can see I outputted the list like this with the Michal at the end. There is a data type called list. So if I go like this and I run just the last line, I get it's a class list. So whenever you are using lists, you are working with a class type list, and it doesn't matter what is the content of the list, right? So let's go to the list.py. Now when I click here, you will see a bunch of code and maybe you will get lost, but this is a good exercise. In your programming career, you will meet with the code of other people, and it's a great time right now to start to read the code. Whenever you will look for some solution online, you will see others' code, so you need to understand how to read the code, okay? So basically here I declared the same, some number list, and I just output the type of the list. Then I declared here something which is string list. So basically, if I call it string list, it doesn't change the type of a list. It will always be the same type. I'm just giving the right descriptive variable names, which is a good exercise for you. Whenever you are creating a variable or a list, give it the appropriate name in order for someone else to understand your code. Now everybody who will see the variable, because this is again a variable, and I'm assigning the value of the variable to a list, right? So everybody who will see now the variable name string list will immediately know that, okay, there is a list and there are string inside, maybe. Yes, of course, you could call it number list and then, you know, trick the guy and put there some numbers, but I don't recommend doing this because then everybody in your company will be angry with you. So combined list, as you can see, you can put the boolean values inside there, even the float values. Yes, Visual Studio Code is also showing you that this is a float value. Now accessing the elements of lists. Imagine you have this list. Okay, I will run it. So in the number list, so if I now go back, you can combine the cooperation with the Visual Studio Code. You can run the code by pressing Shift Enter from the file, and you can directly interact with the terminal down here. So now you can access it from the terminal under the code, just like this. That's the reason why I liked Visual Studio Code with this. You know, this is so the dynamic programming. You can code in the Visual Studio Code, in the interpreter in the same time, and you can see the immediate results. Yeah, so try out, guys, run the commands, do it on your own. Don't just look at this video, rewrite the commands on your own, pause the video if I'm going too fast. Now, list indexing. It means accessing the parts of the list. Now, before we were talking about strings, and strings are basically like lists. Yes, so you can access the string letter by using these special brackets with the number, the position of the letter. And as it is in the strings, also in the lists, the position is indexed from 0. So right now I want to see the first element of the number list because 0 stands for the first. If I run it, it's 0. Yes, because here the number list has the first 0. You can specify a range. So for example, right now I want the third element up until the fourth element. So if you can see, it's only the third element. And the thing is, like when you are specifying the range, you are specifying an interval which looks like, so the closed interval from 3 up to 3 open. Yes, so everything which is greater and equal than the second index and less than the third index. So basically it's just a one number. So if I change it to 4, now I will get 2 numbers, right? So the third and the fourth position, right? Okay, let's go. You can also, if you go like this as it is in the strings, you will get the first 3 elements of the list. It's the same if I go like this. Sorry. Yes, again, you can access the last element on or you can. Okay, so this will give us the last element, which is, you tell me, 7 exactly. Yeah, I forgot to add here the bracket, so you can add the bracket here. It's the 7, yes. And then you can specify the range starting from last elements. Now I want to specify a range starting from the second last element up until the end of the array of the list. So like this. Yeah, there is one more bracket for us. 6 and 7, amazing. If we come next, you can concatenate 2 lists, so exactly as it is with strings, with a plus sign. So if you have the number list, which was defined like this at the top, and then you add there 8, 7, 9, and if you print it out, you go and you get the previous list plus the 3 new elements from the new list you are appending to it. It's called concatenation in this case. Now, let's talk about mutability and immutability. In the Python language, or the Python, you know, the programming language, guys use sometimes the term immutability and mutability. And what basically that means? Imagine you have I will explain it with the example because I'm not into these theoretical terms. So imagine you have a string called best teacher, which is me, Michal Hucko, and the numbers, which is a list. And now strings are immutable and lists are mutable. And what does it mean? So if you have mutable list, you can change the element at the first position. So now I'm changing the element at the first position to 10. So let's first run these 2 commands to have the variables in the memory. And now changing the first element, the element at the first position to 10. And now guess, if I print the numbers, I will have 10 at the first position. Amazing. But now you cannot do something like best teacher 0 and set it to, I don't know, n. So now I want to adjust the string, because the string was called best teacher, at the first position to n. And if I run this, you will see I'm getting a type error, string object doesn't support item assignment. And that's basically what's the mutability and immutability. So the mutable objects you can adjust and immutable objects you cannot, right? Fine, so we will comment this guy and let's go next. Slice assignment. So I was talking about this, so I will skip it right now. So basically, if you are using the slice indexing, it will start with the close interval and finish with the open interval. You can change also these positions. So for example, I want to adjust in numbers these two guys. So I want to adjust the second element and the third element in this case and rewrite it to 12 and 13, right? So if I run the numbers, you can see there is 11, 12, but you can also, you want to change 2 elements, but you are assigning 3 elements, and this will just broad the list. So it will add this extra 13 in the middle. So if I run it like this, and if I run it like this, I can see it added this 13 at the end. And you can also delete it by providing a empty list like this. So if I run it, it's empty, right? Now, let's talk about in-place operation versus not in-place operation. So assign it to 2 numbers. So what are the in-place and not in-place operations? So for example, you have this list, and now imagine you want to append 1 and 2 at the end of the list. If you run it like this, you are not changing the variable numbers, because this operation will return the new list, as you can see right here. But because we didn't assign it to any new variable, we are not adjusting the numbers. So the numbers, as you can see, will stay the same without the 1 and 2. In order to assign it, you need to create a new variable, or the same, this can be also numbers, not just numbers new, and assign the result of the operation, just like this. So if I create a new variable, numbers new, and assign it to a result of numbers plus a new list, we will get the new list. Exactly. You can, so now some syntactic sugar. In Python, the term syntactic sugar stands that you can create certain operations many ways by changing the syntax of the language. So this guy over here, this command, is exactly the same as this command. So if I run it like this, instead that now I'm assigning it to numbers. So this guy over here, so I'm changing the numbers by adding 1 and 2 at the end, is the same as if you write it like plus equals like this. So if I run this, and now look at the numbers, it's appended, right? Fine. You can do it the same with the integers, so by adding +1 to number of nodes, which I specified as 0 at the beginning. That's not a problem. So this was not in place operation because you need to assign a variable with the result value, but there are some in place operations. For example, imagine you have numbers like this. So now if you look at the numbers, it's just from 0 to 5, and now you want to append 10 at the end, and append is in place operation, which means you don't have to assign this to somewhere. It will immediately adjust the variable, and now if I print, it's at the end, right? It's very good to have in mind these in place and not in place terms, in order if you are looking for something at the web, you know which vocabulary to use to put into the Google. Okay, now there are special functions connected with the lists which are directly built into Python, so it provides it for you. So let's discover. For example, you have this list called numbers, and now you want to get the length of the numbers list. So if you press, guess what's the output? It's 6, exactly. Now you can get the length of the string also, like 6. Then you can remove something from the list by calling the function called remove with the index, so the position and which you want to delete the items. So for example, like this. And now if you look at the numbers, what will be the result? Starting from 1, exactly. Now let's talk about pointers. Imagine you have like variable numbers assigned to a list, and now you will assign a new variable to the old variable. So now the same numbers will point to numbers. So the same numbers will after this have the same value. I I misselected it, so one more time. So the same numbers will have now what? So if you go to the end and you go like print the same numbers, we will get this list. And now if you adjust the same numbers to 10, so you will change the first position and you will print the same numbers again, you will see that the first element changed from 0 to 10, but not only this element, but also the element in numbers, original numbers. And that's why, because when you are assigning a variable to a variable, you are pointing from this variable to the old one, and you are changing also the old one. It's quite complicated. Take a time to absorb this information, look at the code, and think about it. Yes, you are pointing with the variable to an old variable, and when you are adjusting the new variable, you are immediately adjusting the old variable. That's the reason why both of them changed. Yes, so I will add the print here for you, just to have it complete. Now, in order to create a copy of a list in the new variable, you need to call the copy, and in this case, the old variable will not change. So for example, if you run it like this, and we assign the first element to 10, and we look into the old variable, it doesn't change. Now, you can have elements in the list of any kind of object, as I mentioned. So you can put a list into the list. So this is a list which has the numbers in it, and this element is a list, and this is the second element is a list, in which is again a list with the element of 5. Crazy stuff, right? Don't worry guys, just think about it. Pause the video and look at the code. Now, we want to get the last element. What is the last element of this list? What do you think? So I will assign a value to the variable numbers and lists. And now I will retrieve the last element from numbers and lists, and it is this guy over here, because that's the last element of the outer list. And now you can access the element in the element. So you will chain these brackets like this. So we want the first element of the last element of the numbers and lists. So if I run it, what will be the answer? 3. Exactly, it's 3. Try to get only the number 5 as an exercise for you. Feel free to take your time and think about it. You can chain these brackets, as I said, it's very easy. So if you listen carefully, you will do it immediately. Now, other list functions. Let's talk about letters. You can have a list of letters. Now, if, as you can see, there is the name of the amazing teacher. So, letters. And now, list of letters is not the same as a string, right? Because string is connected list of letters in one place, and list is mutable, and string is immutable, right? So, there is a function called count, which counts the occurrence of the element in the list. So in Michal, Hutzko, how many C's are there? Oh, there are 2. Amazing. Letters extend. These will append list at the end of the list. It will append elements at the end of the list, right? And now you think about it. But what is the difference between append and extend? Let's check it out. So you want to append 1 and 2 at the end of letters. So if I run it like this, and if I look at the letters, so there are, you see they are put there. So the list was concatenated, and the elements of this list was added at the end. And now if I run it like this, and think about this is in place operation. So we are adding it to the changed letters, right? So if I run it now, you can see the element was added as an element of with the value of list. Yes. So the main difference, in one case you are adding a list as an element, and in the other case you are appending elements of the list to the new list. Right? You can remove X's from list. Yeah. Not in list, as you can see, there will be the value because there is no X in my name. But if I change it to C and run it, you will see it's not there. Yes, you can insert at the third position, at the index 3 you want to insert the X with this command. So now you can see there is an X at the 1, 2, 3, 4 position, because 3 stands for index 3, which is the fourth position, because we are indexing from 0, as I mentioned. You can reverse the list. Yeah, in this case the list is reversed, and you can pop, which will return the last element and remove it from here. So if I run it again, you will see there is no more M, right? You can clear the whole list, but this will delete the list for us. It's empty. Fine. And there is also a special function, which is a sort function. I will cover maybe sorts in future chapters. Yeah, understanding the sorts is essential in the programming language, because sorts are used in every like framework, in every technology. But right now, you only thing you have to know, if you have, for example, a numbered list like this, and you run a sort function upon it, again, it's an in-place function, so the numbers will be directly adjusted. So if I run the sort, and now if I run the numbers, you will see they are ordered in numerical order, right? And if there are multiple elements, they will be just, chain one after another. That was a lot of information, Michal, right? Am I right? Exactly. So you need to take time, go maybe through this video 2 to 3 times. It really depends on your skill in programming. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys, and I hope I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.